of people say the harmonica is easy to play but really difficult to master. Do you think that's true? Because I find a lot of people find it difficult from day one almost.
All instruments have their things that they do very easily and are extremely difficult. And what's interesting is some of the sounds that don't sound to be very difficult can take a tremendous amount of time to master. So I think the harmonica, like all instruments, has its challenges. If you're not focusing on a single note, whether you're puckering a single note or tongue blocking a single note, the instrument's pretty straightforward. So that's why I'll start my students, and a lot of people do, with these type of chordal things. Getting them sound musical and moving with some rhythm right away. As it goes for achieving a single note, that gives us the ability to play melodies. And the premise there for the student is once you can play a single note, then you can allow it to grow. So you can't really play those type of sounds until you can learn to find the single note, and then enough leakage to, in this case I'm on 4, moving over to 5, to get that dirt, as Joe Falisco calls it, that two-note combination that evokes emotion. You get too much, and it becomes too aggressive. There's times for that, but you don't want that to be that all the time. There's some challenges. Are we talking tongue blocking or puckering right now, or both?
Either, really, yeah. I suppose most people, they go to a harmonica and they almost expect to be able to get a single note straight away, I suppose, is what's behind what I'm saying.
Got it, absolutely. That's very much the case, and you'll talk to Bill Bucko, for example, and he'll lament over the idea that when you pick up the trumpet, you don't expect to make music right away. You know, if you and it's squealing and doing crazy stuff, or you're playing a clarinet and it's squawking like a goose, that you don't say, well, this instrument's broken. You don't go to your local music store and return it for one that sounds better. Very much so. We expect to be able to play music right away. There's 2 tips that can help the new player who's looking to get a good, clean single note. Let me start with tongue blocking. I'll just do pucker, and I'll try to be brief. When players are tongue blocking, I don't recommend you start with the tongue on the harmonica right away. If you play 1, 2, 3, 4, for example, I always tell my students, open mouth, insert harmonica. Resist the urge to bring your mouth to the harmonica, because that's going to close the mouth down and cause tone problems and possibly that bending that you're talking about, unintentional bending on the tube. So I'll start them simply with I'll have them tilt the face of the harmonica down slightly, just so ergonomics will bring the face of the harmonica to the top of the tongue. Simply put, the tip of the tongue is not wide enough to block all the holes we need to do for all of our techniques. So the top of the tongue, right past the tip called the blade, or even a little bit further back, more easily covers the 3 holes, in this case, holes 1, 2, and 3, to achieve the 4th hole single note with less pressure. And a light touch is very important for, of course, speed, because you don't want the tongue dragging across the face of the harmonica, but also good tone. As soon as we start to push, the tongue will start to hump up and raise and fill up our mouth cavity and, again, give us poor tone. So I'll have them start with 1, 2, 3, 4. Have the tongue aim a little bit towards the left, thinking about 11 o'clock, and present the very top of the tongue. And don't push hard. Just a light touch, little by little, until that 4th hole appears clean. Once that single note appears, then don't push any harder. That's the light touch you need. And of course, you're going to get a little bit of 5, a little bit of 3 as you're working towards the 4th, but usually those micro movements with patience and having that ear of, okay, I'm going to move around a little bit until I find that clean note, will bring some success. For the pucker, the same thing. I also advocate tilting a little bit, so you're emphasizing a little bit more of the lower lip. Instead of having the center line of the holes be dead straight here, which is the widest point of your mouth, it starts to become more narrow. So if the student is playing, say, holes 1, 2, and 3, and then they slightly tilt the harmonica, maybe it's about 30 degrees to 45 degrees, not too aggressive. Again, open mouth, insert harmonica. We'll find that point that nestles in to their lower lip, enough pucker so that they get that single note. For your students, focus on the blow notes, because you won't have those same issues that you have with the draw notes, because those draw notes are bendable. And what's happening is your draw notes are influenced by the tuning of your mouth. So as we learn how to bend on the harmonica, we're tuning our mouth to the pitch of the reed we're trying to affect. So if your mouth unintentionally, for you new students, is tuned to a pitch slightly below a certain reed, or in other words, in its bendable range, it'll affect its ability to sound. And the two draw just happens to be the tongue is in the normal position for one's tongue in speech is very similar to something that's right below the bendable range of the two and causes it to squeal and stall. So an important thing for all students is to open their mouth, they go in front of a mirror, and they learn how to lower the back of the tongue. So the tongue is responsible for all good and evil on the harmonica. And the first thing to do is to confirm that your tongue is actually doing what you think it is, because commonly at workshops, I'll have students, okay, we're going to open our mouth, drop your tongue, all right, everyone good? Now look to your neighbor. And they look to their neighbor, and their tongue's like that. Most of the time. So spending some time in front of the mirror with the harmonica out of the mouth is very important, because that's what's gonna fix those single notes. And what ends up being very important for good tone for players as they're trying to get out of that bending period of heavy bending study, because they're used to constricting and doing all this stuff to get those bends, and it takes time to kind of open things back up so they're not bending stuff unintentionally. Yeah, so this can be a good little challenge, but if you stay pretty much on the fourth hole and above for a while, avoid a lot of draw notes, especially the two draw. In my first study song at LearnTheHarmonica.com, no two draws. We're using three blows. And little by little, I'll start to bring them into some of the more challenging holes.